Hello, friends. This is Sarah Palmer, currently broadcasting from the Kensington Library.
This is Linda Yao, and I'm right now on-site on Northeast Regional Library.
And we're here for another episode of Toshokan FLP. And today we focus on fanworks. We're going to focus on that for the next several shows. But so today is mostly an introductory one, talking about the overall picture. So, do you want to start by talking some about the legal aspect?
Okay, so normally fan fiction and fan art means that fans will be creating from series that they like. Like if they like a certain series, they'll either draw pictures of it or they'll write fan fictions of it. However, the controversy about the issues of this is the fact that, is this violating copyright? Is this taking away from the original author or company's intention with their works? All right. And so very often, also the issue is that, is it plagiarism? Is it not legal? So a lot of different published authors have actually came out and been critical of fan art and fan fiction, more so with fan fiction, not so much with fan art. But normally, because fan arts usually become like, you could see them for sale, and that makes a bit of a difference. So oftentimes when you talk about this with lawyers, or they will actually either uphold it or they'll not uphold it. So at this point, it's just a way of retelling or claiming. Fan fiction and fan art is just a way of claiming or repurposing it to fill a void, such as if you don't see something in the original series, what can you do in order to transform it? And it usually is followed greatly by other people. Is there any other comments? Do you want to talk about that? I wonder. So another thing is that because of the controversy, other than the fact that people have issues with authors having plagiarism, is the different archives out there, are they allowed to actually charge fees from anyone who reads it? Because the internet, supposedly all information is free on the internet. How about one of the companies that we're going to be talking about, or archives that we're talking about tonight, they actually might have gotten some legal issues because they kept on asking people to donate money to their archive. What does that mean? And then how much money is it supposed to be for that? Does that take away from the fact that this is all supposed to be free? Because as I was reading and writing, as I was reading and trying to write my own fan fiction a long time ago, I've always remembered to put in at the beginning of every single fan fiction I've read or written, a disclaimer. A disclaimer to try and say that those are not ours. And so I think right now, currently,
these characters are not my own.
So currently, I think what is happening is that fan art and fan fiction are under the creative license right now. It's the common one, right?
The Creative Commons,
Creative Commons. And so sometimes writers wouldn't take offense for it, but I know a couple of ones have taken offense for it in the very past, like Diana Gabaldon and
the Highlander lady.
And J.K. Rowling had issues at one time or the other. I remember a story where one of her fans tried to publish the lexicon for
Mm-hmm.
Harry Potter, and
Oh, wow.
that totally got taken down by by J.K. Rowling, as she also afterwards she published her own lexicon
Uh-huh.
for what Harry Potter is. So I
Right.
personally always thought that the fan lexicon was
Mm-hmm.
so much more better than what I saw in the published work afterwards. So
Yep.
you see a lot of times you see with fan fiction, because I love fan fiction. I still
Mm-hmm.
love reading fan fiction, right?
Oh, yes.
Oftentimes it's a stepping point for other artists, like any other persons, to actually go
Mm-hmm.
on make their own work. A famous example would be either
Mm-hmm.
Twilight, or is it 50 Shades of Grey? Can't
50 Shades of
remember.
Grey. It's 50
50
Shades.
Shades of Grey was they started their work from a fan fiction for Twilight,
Mm-hmm.
and then it got transformed into her own work
Yes.
for 50 Shades of Grey.
And
Oftentimes,
I did want to mention that, so that's a case of a fanfic specifically morphing into a published work. But there's also a lot of fan fiction authors who have kind of honed their skills with fan fiction and then have become big. I think we might have talked a bit about this before, but Cassandra Clare is one example, and so is Sarah Rees Brennan, both of whom write for the young adult crowd.
And I know a couple of adult fan fiction authors who have either went on and created their own work, or they went on to becoming professionals, like in other industries. Thus, it's also one of the things I've seen in conventions, right? Prior to regarding about fan art, right? Oftentimes in the early days, like maybe over when fan art was currently still kind of not really taken very seriously in terms of American stuff, right?
Yeah.
I remember Japanese companies going around artist alleys and usually saying, do not sell this, do not sell this, do not sell this.
Yeah.
So kind of like a verbal cease and desist order.
Interesting.
I think Shonen, no, one of them was Shonen, no, it doesn't have to be Shueisha, but one of the Japanese company who was at a convention, they actually did go around and do that.
Nope. They said. This is not necessarily relevant right now, but I did want to mention in context with fanworks, there's a saying that there's a rule 34 of fandom, which is if it exists, there's internet porn of it. But sometimes I'll also say if it exists, there's fan fiction of it. If it exists, there's bad fan fiction of it. And if it exists, there's a wiki about it. So, I mean, it's expanded, but the original was internet porn. And I don't remember if this is porn, but there's Thomas the Tank Engine fan fiction.
There is? Seriously? Wow.
Yeah, I don't think it's a big niche, but it's a niche.
I just started reading some K-drama fan fiction. And also, there has been boy band fan fiction. I don't know if you know anything about
Direction,
that. One Direction.
The Police thing and whatnot. Yeah.
TV shows, poetry, anything and everything can be fan fiction or fan art or something else of where, by the way, it could be either G-rated or it could go all the way up to NSFW.
Yes, NC-17.
Or NC-17, NC-17 or NSFW, not safe for work. That's normally when I see about fan fiction. No, fan art.
Yeah, but isn't NC-17, isn't it? Is that the most adult of adults? Or R is the most adult of adults? Okay.
I don't believe that. I believe NSFW covers everything.
Well, no, that's true. But in terms of rating, I mean, I think not safe for work is just sort of a general thing. You're right, but if you're trying to break it down, like who's the intended audience for it?
However, NC-17 doesn't exactly. I mean, it also depends on if you want to say it's kind of like drinking age. 21 is the oldest one, or versus 18. like if it's 18, rated R is 18.
Mhm.
So, don't know. Do you think that right now the age of consent is 17? That's the thing.
I just know that that's a code. Let me see what it says. It's a movie.
It's a movie.
Okay.
Everything, a lot of the ratings are coming from
Yeah.
movies.
hmm So I'm looking. Okay, no one 17 or under admitted, which is so it's basically 18 plus.
18 plus. 18
Yeah.
plus. Okay. Because I kind of stopped reading. I guess the lowest now I read in terms of fan fiction is
hmm
P. It's probably P3 PG-13 and up.
Yeah,
That's the lowest I
I
could
think
go.
that's probably the bulk of fan fiction.
Yes.
It does. It sounds like R is they allow distributions to more outlets than NC-17 movies.
Yes. Yes, it does. Because R only covers non-adult stuff,
Yeah,
non-smut stuff, non-porn stuff.
yeah,
Not that.
yeah.
What else? I don't know. It's like,
Oh God.
oh no. There's a lot of things have been changing in fan fiction and fan art in a very long time. I remember when in the early days of the internet, I remember people kind of like copying it,
Yeah,
and it was never really that good fan art.
yeah.
But then they made it their own. But right now I see a lot of more professional artists going into and making and doing
Yeah.
fan art before they
Mhm.
go and do their own their own
Right.
print. A lot of times in fan art, the artist alleys, I see a lot of shipping and pairings.
hmm
And so that contributes to the fan lore, I
Yes,
think.
absolutely.
Cosplay is also considered to be a fan. It's a fandom aspect.
Say that again.
So
What?
cosplay
A cosplay? Yeah.
is considered to be a fan a
hmm
fan creation scenario. Although
Yeah.
I've seen shops in Japan that actually ready-made cosplay outfits. So it goes
hmm
from own creations that
Yeah.
you see winning awards in
Yeah.
Japan and in America,
Yeah.
like the Cosplay Summit,
hmm
to you could go into like a store like Ricky's
hmm
and buy like ready-made ones already.
Yeah. Well,
I
or
I
even
personally have not.
I was going to say that Naruto headbands are easy to find for sale.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Have you ever cosplayed, Sarah? I've never cosplayed before.
I have always wanted to, but I don't have the skill set to create my own costume, so that's what is
Mm-hmm.
holding me back. Um,
Well, that's also what's holding me back as well. Also, so I became more like a cosplay photographer.
yeah,
I appreciated the fact that people actually ended up cosplaying,
yeah,
and I would end up going to go take pictures because I
absolutely,
like
yeah,
looking at pictures like that.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, yeah, it's exciting both to see the intense work many people put in, or the humor, or I mean, sort of like the inventiveness aspect too,
Mm-hmm.
like cosplaying on a dime. But um,
That is also very true.
yeah, some people will
And
spend
people have been,
hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars on their costumes, um,
yes, 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 yes.
as
And
well
I've
as
also
hours
seen
and hours
them,
of work. Um,
yeah, that is all hours and hours, but I've also seen cosplay of memes.
oh, that's great.
I don't know, have you ever
Like
seen
Neon Cat or
cosplays
something.
of memes? Neon cats or like the ball pit.
What's a ball pit?
There was one, it was one convention that actually became a ball pit. There was a ball pit meme that it was affiliated with it. And then the next convention I went to, I
Uh,
saw one person actually going around with suits of color balls. Like
that's great.
everything around him was like color balls. And so I
Yeah.
kind of get the meme. They got,
Mhm.
one of the conventions actually had an issue and everything was just taken away by one of the organizers. And the only thing left in the convention was a ball pit
Oh
representing
man.
that.
Wow.
I think I have to look up that convention. I think I have
Yeah,
to
that
look
should
up
be
that convention to
interesting.
let you know what the meme is about.
Yeah.
So,
Um, do you mind if I go into the organization of transformative works now?
yes,
Okay.
yes, you could definitely.
Okay, so um, it is an organization formed in 2007 that is a nonprofit organization run by and for fans to provide access to and preserve the history of fan works and fan cultures. And so it's a major deal. It's got a bunch of projects. It's got Open Doors, which is dedicated to offering shelter to at-risk fanish content. And that has sub-projects of rescuing content from the internet, whether it's PDFs, multimedia fan works, historically important fan sites, and other digital artifacts. Then there's the Fan Culture Preservation Project, which is a project jointly done with the University of Iowa, where they're digitizing things like fanzines, physical works. And then finally, there's the GeoCities Rescue Project, because GeoCities, along with Tripod, was source of a lot of, and not the source, but a place where a lot of early fan fiction was hosted, and fan sites in general. So that's all under Open Doors. They also have a project called fanlore.org, and admittedly, there's a whole lot of wikis out there for individual fandoms, and I'd say TV Tropes is a very good site for information, but Fanlore specifically, hang on, is an OTW-sponsored framework within which fans can document their understandings of and experience in fandom, past and present. And it's an encyclopedic resource that's a living archive of fandom history for the benefit of fans themselves. So then there's the fan studies aspect, which now includes a peer-reviewed academic journal called Transformative Works and Culture that comes out, I think, twice a year. There's a database called Fan Hackers, which is it's a curated database of scholarship. And then there's the Fan Fiction Studies Reader, which is another collaboration with the University of Iowa, focusing on the historical roots of fan studies. So it's kind of meta. It's examining fan studies as a field. And then there's Zotero Fan Studies Bibliography, which is a pretty comprehensive bibliography of fan studies. And then they have a major legal focus, which is protecting and defending fan works from commercial exploitation. Hang on, where'd it go? From commercial exploitation and legal challenge. So that, I mean, that's got some legal defense, but it's also got advocacy and things like that. And finally, the way I first heard about the organization of transformative works was through Archive of Our Own, which is a fully fan-created and fan-run, non-commercial and non-profit central hosting site for transformative fan works, such as fan fiction, fan art, fan videos, and podfic. And it's got a lot of good features if you want to host your fan fiction or your fan works. You can add your own tags, you can recommend other people's works, you can subscribe to see when they're next going to publish a chapter. You can create lists of favorite fics or specific fics. And I believe they have a fan challenge aspect too, where you can set up a challenge to, I guess, say, write a fic about, write a holiday fic about in a given fandom, or focus on one particular ship, all sorts of things. So definitely Archive of Our Own is a major resource now, and I think one of the best respected sites for fan fiction. Some
Although
of the,
one of the,
yeah,
oh, sorry.
I was going to mention fanfiction.net and go a bit
Oh
into
yeah,
that.
fanfiction. Oh
Yeah,
yeah. So the thing is that that's one of the controversies regarding it. Even though I love archives of our own because I
yeah,
also read a lot from them.
yeah.
They actually ask for donations up to 100,000,
Mm,
but they're volunteer. There's a lot of people who are
yeah,
quote unquote volunteers. So then the question is, how much should it be? How much
yeah,
should it be? Like, how much does it take to run an archive versus where exactly
yeah,
is the money going to?
yeah. I think it's certainly not going to the authors. And but I mean, you heard everything I just went through. That requires like I expect they have some professional staff for the archive, for the legal defense, for putting together databases and collaborating with universities. To me, it makes sense that OTW as a whole would be asking for funds, and Archive of Our Own is one aspect of that. If it was fan fiction authors saying, pay me to put more chapters up, that would be a different story.
Mm.
But yeah, if they were kind of trying to monetize the product, uh, like you can print this fan art out on and have it sent to you for X dollars, but that's not what it's about. So hang on. There's so fanfiction.net is the first place I came to. Well, the first place I posted fanfiction, the first place I really ever knew about, and it it does have a wide range of features that include the availability of beta readers, um, the ability to comment and have a back and forth with fans, again, subscriptions, and creating lists, I think, and tagging. And tagging can become an art in itself. Like somebody might put a tag saying shameless fluff as one tag, and then but there's some serious content too as the next tag. So the people have fun with tags, but they're also very useful for finding the kind of fic you want. And content warnings can be in there as well, which we can go more into, but not right now. But fanfiction.net early on was given the nickname the Pit of Voles because of a sort of an insulting impression that the quality of the content there was not great. But I think it's really, I mean, I think that was probably never entirely true. I mean, there's still a lot of good stuff. What fanfiction.net as a huge resource has suffered from are some of those challenges that you were talking about earlier. And I just want to find that site where it talked about that. 1 second.
But let me just mention is that all of fanfiction.net, all of archives of our own, those are considered to be public domain. And so anyone can put it there. So it's oftentimes copyright comes into like if the author finds offense, like a plagiarism kind of aspect. But when, according to what Sara says, anything like shameless fluff or parody or satire, those are allowed. With fan fiction. Fair use is also about used with their, in terms of fan fiction and fan art. And specifically because fan fiction builds up dedicated fan bases. They're actually happy for people to exist, like what Sara said earlier about the Wikipedia of fandoms. Something like. But then again, my first exposure to fan fiction culture came in through a Sailor Moon romance. That's a fan fiction. Have you ever heard about that one?
No.
Fan fiction. It was a Sailor Moon fan fiction archive that kind of went down.
And
I
sort
remember
of thing that they're now trying to rescue, in fact.
And I remember being part of a lot of mailing lists. That was how I first got exposed to fan fiction.
Mm-hmm.
So fanfiction.net came on later.
Yeah. The other way I was exposed for a while was through LiveJournal, where I joined communities that were fans of a given series, and they would post fanfics, or there was even a fic on demand site, but maybe we could talk a little bit more about that next time. But so
I think that.
Oh, I forgot to mention one key. No, I did mention FanLore, which is a project of OTW, but it actually has an in-depth article on fanfiction.net, going through all the different. I mean, it's really comprehensive. It talks about issues with downtime, issues with format, and then the hefty part of it is about content guidelines, where beginning in the late 1990s, early 2000s, FF and then fanworks based on specific authors, and were still in place as of 2017. Anne Rice, Archie Comics, Dennis McKiernan, Irene Radford, J.R. Ward, Laurel K. Hamilton, Nora Roberts, Ian Elrod, Raymond Feist, Robin Hub, Robin McKinley, and Terry Goodkind. And then in 2001, they banned real person fic, which is it experienced a hidden resurgence in the J-pop and K-pop categories. They're undercover RPF fics that are more likely to be in a language other than English. So then adult content has been restricted. And in 2002 and 2012, NC-17 content was purged. And the forums were purged, with discussion forums, to reduce clutter.
I mean, I've heard of fan fiction authors completely taking down their archive of stuff.
Yeah.
But even before their archives of stuff was taken down, they got a reputation for having a really good fan fiction.
Yeah. Yeah. So they were well known, and as a result, maybe that was part of the problem for them. There's this script format ban. Let's see, a 2005 ban on choose your own adventure, fic, self-insertion fic, reader insert fic, second person point of view fic, which is pretty hefty. And
where exactly does that leave all of the other fan fiction then? I've never heard of this before. Yeah.
And song fic as well.
Oh God, I remember reading those. I just remember. I didn't see the purge, but I know the purge happened.
Yeah. And then there's conflict, defamation, and flaming. So users are now able to report signed reviews for views and block unwanted users from contacting them. Libel was removed as a forbidden practice from the terms of service. Interesting. So there's a lot of stuff about fan fiction, but it is one of our most storied and historied resources.
I mean, I like to read more fan fiction than I like to read, than I like to watch fan art. I'm sorry, I have a very big preference for that.
Yeah. I am definitely still a big fan fiction reader and have subscribed to a bunch of stories. Oh, we have a. Wait, what? Did you see somebody?
No, I'm just agreeing. I'm not saying I agree. I agree.
Yeah. Wait, what were you talking about?
You said you still read fan fiction.
Oh yes, I still read fan fiction. I'm subscribed to stories that may never be updated again. But I still hold on in dreams. There's actually, and there's a fan fiction that I never finished that I think some people are subscribed to. So I feel guilty.
I have a Sailor Moon and Sailor Moon Yu Hakusho fan fiction that I've been trying to finish for years.
You mean
That's
a
not gonna
crossover?
happen. A crossover, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, mine, the one that I haven't finished was actually a Yu-Gi-Oh version of Romeo and Juliet. And it was fun to work on it, but then I sort of got tangled up with the characterizations, and so I don't know if I'll ever get it.
Do you know if there's any library programming about maybe having like fan lore stuff available?
I think that would be very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
You mean to have our own archive of it, or to have workshops about it, or
to have our own archives about it? I've actually been a part of creative writing workshops that talk about how to create your own fan fiction and fan art. I remember doing that when I was in high school.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an area that would still be of interest to a lot of people. I also want to go over some of the, hang on. Of course, I'm all over the place as usual on my computer. Okay.
You don't want to look at my screen right now.
Is it NSFW? No.
No, it's not. It's just so much tabs.
Yeah, oh, believe me, I know about that. So in preparing for this conversation, I actually pulled up a bunch of interesting, to me anyway, articles that are from somewhat mainstream websites focusing on fan fiction. And I think it was partly in the wake of 50 Shades of Grey, that bringing up the discussion. Bringing up more discussion of this. But I pulled out some quotes that I really thought were interesting. So Book Riot, which is a pretty neat website that, among other things, hosts the Read Harder Challenge every year. You're challenged to read something that, read in a bunch of areas that are typically ignored or less focused on, including own voices and books from the decade you were born. It's a great list, but that's another topic. So they have an article called Shippers, Recs, and OTPs, A History of Fan Fiction. And
OTP OTP is one true pairing, right?
That's right, you got it. And we'll talk more about the lingo next time. So here's a quote. Even before fan fiction expanded into the queer fest it can be, the article previously talked about how fan fiction has been an area for /fic, for LGBTQ explorations of things presented as heterosexual in the original. So, but even before it expanded into the queer fest it can be, it was still about fixing or expanding on aspects of a fandom that felt lacking.
Like gender swap or gender switching.
Or in another way, you could look at Harry Potter, for example, and one thing, I enjoyed the Harry Potter books, but I did feel like it was still a bit too oversimplifying of things like Slytherin and stuff like that. And I felt like some of the fan fictions I read gave a sense of how Slytherin could, despite all its negatives, could still be an internally supportive community at Hogwarts.
I think literally fan fiction had led to a change with the general fiction overview. Like after I started reading a lot of fan fiction, right?
Yeah. And
it started to talk about the underdog of things, right? Yeah. I think I remember seeing that in the trend of published books where they were doing a lot of, is it parody or a lot of flip fairy tales? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
When they talked about.
Yeah, I've definitely seen a lot of publishing of that. And Emma Donahue has some really interesting retellings of fairy tales. But I think it was Tor that published a whole bunch of rewritings, like of Hamlin, set in a modern setting, and Briar Rose. I think it was called Briar Rose. I think it was Jane Yolen who kind of put Sleeping Beauty in a somewhat, I think it was like a 1930s or 40s context. And yeah, those. Go on.
I mean, one of the more, I always thought it was a published author trying to do something, because Anne Rice did come out with her adult version of the Sleeping Beauty story.
Yeah, in the cases I was mentioning, it was published authors, pretty much well-known authors doing it. Yeah, you could also think of the retelling, The Mists of Avalon, and the retellings of the Arthur stories. And there's, you'll also see that in things like children's fiction, children's historical fiction. There's the Vice article on the early history of fan fiction. I forgot to put a quote there, but the Atlantic had an article on the surprising 18th century origins of fan fiction. And it turns out that Gulliver's Travels really generated a lot of response among his readers. So William Hogarth, who's a famous satirical artist, actually did a kind of vulgar representation of Gulliver. And then Alexander Pope, who is a diarist and a poet, responded to Gulliver's Travels from the perspective of Gulliver's presumed wife, and how disappointed she was that when he finally came back, he would not engage in his conjugal duties. So, yeah, I remember what was in the Vice article. It talked about Don Quixote, and so Miguel de Cervantes wrote the first volume of Don Quixote, and before he came out with his own next volume, somebody put under a pseudonym, put a follow-up unauthorized volume out. So there's an article in Tech Times which focuses a lot on the Star Trek connection. Before the internet really got going, fan fiction was already alive and well with the Spookanalia print zine.
Or the sci-fi community.
Yeah, even before Star Trek. And one writer that's quoted in the article said, "For decades, fan fiction communities, soon to migrate en masse to the web, functioned as a subset of science fiction and fantasy fandom, where they were treated by the mostly male nerds who ran things like a younger sister best banished to her room whenever company came by." But on the other hand, the article observes that Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry went on to proclaim this Spookanalia zine as required reading for every new writer and anyone who makes decisions on show policy, in a letter to the zine's creators. So, I mean, there's very, very different ways that people responsible for the original properties can react. And
is zines considered to be I know what I know about zines is that they are created like short magazine, like short, like blurbs of reading certain things, right?
Yeah.
But are they also zines of fan fiction fandom?
That's exactly what Spookanalia was. And so, yeah, I mean, zines can really be about anything. They can be about your personal experiences. I read a bit of a zine that was about the author's experiences being guinea pig for experiments. But then it can be on any topic that interests you. So obviously fandom is a huge topic.
So it's kind of like own voice. It's kind of like, remember when we talked about own voices in terms of manga to read?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I
just remembered something. When you talk about published authors having a fan fiction approach to their works, I actually remember seeing a professional artist actually having fan art themselves. When I visited Vincent van Gogh's museum in Amsterdam, right?
Ooh.
He actually had fan art, what I called fan art renditions of the Edo paintings.
Oh, wow.
Because for the longest time, Amsterdam was the only country in the Western world able to trade with Japan.
That's right.
So even though Van Gogh never went to Japan, he actually, in his museum, I saw that there was actually some fan art renditions that he did.
So cool.
Well, I call it fan art, but him copying the original work, the Edo scrolls.
Yeah, that's so intriguing. But that actually kind of leads me to the next article, which was featured in TechCrunch, and I'm going to try to put up the links to these articles when we post the video. But TechCrunch talked about mashups, which can range from artistic to technological. One of my favorite mashups, and anime music videos, for example, can sort of be a mashup, but it's especially putting things that you'd never expect to see together.
You never expect that.
So, for example, one of my favorite fan videos ever, is of video footage from both Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Twilight. And all Buffy's snarky remarks are directed at the very serious, heartthrobby Edward from Twilight, and she winds up putting him out of his misery. Yes.
I just remember seeing a lot of song fics around around series I like to see. Either textual representations, or it's like music videos for like Harry Potter. Harry Potter fan fiction.
Yeah, we'll definitely go more into some of those music videos because there are some great ones.
That's another episode.
Yeah,
oh my God.
That was most of what I wanted to cover. Was there anything else you wanted to check in about on this?
I don't know. There's always like this month National NaNoWriMo, right?
NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing
NaNoWriMo. I remember just seeing it, like everyone saying fan fiction must also have like a fan fiction month, something like that. So people actually do use this month NaNoWriMo to write a fan fiction that's novel length in size.
Yeah, and there. I know one. Oh, I was going to say that there are support communities for NaNoWriMo out there online, and I wouldn't be surprised if the fan version also had some support communities.
I mean, at this point, I know one thing. With everything I've ever wanted to say anymore about it is reading Harry Potter fan fiction has spoiled me for reading anything regular Harry Potter again. I don't care. Yeah. That is my cup of tea. But same thing also is that with the reading of all the television shows I like to read. Yeah. I remember seeing the response. Benedict Cumberbatch and Martin Freeman from Sherlock Holmes, that version, right? They are aware about the whole fandom pairing with them. Yeah. Oh yes. But they're like, because both Benedict and both Martin are actually heterosexual. They're appreciative, but they're kind of like squeamish about it. It's kind of like when you hear about the whole aspect of fans throwing their panties on stage. Yeah, that's an artist and a singer.
there's somebody I met who's a fan of the police and has written fan fiction about them.
Mm-hmm.
And she has actually been to their concerts and is a really devoted concert goer. And I think
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
at least one of the performers may know about the fan side of things. And I
Mm-hmm.
got the impression that he didn't really care, that it made no difference to him.
Like Terry Pratchett, before he passed away,
Mm-hmm.
he said he didn't care about fan fiction.
Mm-hmm.
He said as long as he doesn't see it, he's
Right.
fine with it.
Yeah.
I think Neil Gaiman is actually very aware of his fan base having fan
Mm-hmm.
culture, and he loves it.
Yeah.
I think he loves it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's so many different ways the original artists can react. I'm kind of curious how Cervantes reacted, or for that matter, Jonathan Swift. But some things we'll never know.
Yeah, some things we'll never know. But for the aspect is like, the question is, how does librarians in general, are they also fan fiction writers or readers themselves? Because I use fan fiction for the for the longest of times. I was like thinking to myself, is this actual reading of a book? You know how we have print versions versus e-versions of certain books. Is this considered to be reading? Is reading fan fiction considered to be a more acceptable way of reading books?
It's certainly got an increasing consideration as a sort of crucible for writers, or maybe even more a school, an informal school for writers, with the presence of beta readers and commenters and all that. So I recently commented on this one fan fiction from Yuri on Ice that I really was enjoying. I am still enjoying it, but the one thing that was kind of bothering me was that several times in a chapter she would use the verb deadpan. And I don't mind it as a verb in general, but it kept showing up, and finally I made a comment about it. And I haven't seen deadpan again in the chapters. So it is a way to, it's collaborative in the sense of letting people know the impact of what they're writing, for example.
Isn't that kind of like how Japanese mangaka would often see the polls in Japan?
Yes.
To see how much it is, because I've gotten into the aspect of just lurk. I lurk a lot. I don't really, I just accept reading fan fiction for what it is, and so I lurk a lot. Don't neither comment or make suggestions.
Yeah.
Because I used to be a beta reader.
Yeah, although you're still going to be a view hit if people are following that.
Like a consumer of stuff.
Consumer. But beta writing, beta reading, I was also a beta reader for a while, and I really enjoyed it, but it is time consuming, and
it is very time consuming. It's kind of like editing. Editing works before they actually get published. So, and then, I don't know, but the thing is that I always felt, even though it's a crucible for writers, right? As a reader, I think it diversified my reading and acceptance for what is pleasurable leisure reading. There are tools out there that allows you to extract the entire fan fiction to actually read on your own phone, like offline.
Cool.
So you don't have to stay online all the time to read it. Very similar to how when we're talking about webtoons, webcomics, that I would normally not really be able to consume it because everything's online, and because I'm offline a lot. I just downloads like an insane amount of books and stories, not books, stories to read.
One thing,
just use it. What's up?
Go on.
No, go on.
Okay. So I was looking to see if the library system had any of the Thai BL series, and I was not finding any of them. But so I finally went to Hoopla, and I put in the name of one of the series, and a recording came up that was pianist rendering the songs from the series. And so that was a published CD that the library acquired through Hoopla. And so it's not quite fan fiction or fan art, because I'm sure they crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's when they arranged for it, but it's still a new take on the music. So
I've heard fan covers of certain songs getting like people starting on YouTube. They have a lot of fan covers.
Yeah, I think we'll talk a bit more about that too next time. Maybe even show a little bit of some of our favorites if time allows.
I think so too. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
we're done for this week. We're done for this time.
We're done for this time, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Carry on, ganbatte.
So have a good day, even though it's rainy outside. It's 気をつけて。
気をつけてね。
So, またねー。